The FBI has identified San Diego as one of the top 13 cities in the country when it comes to child prostitution. Here to talk about the new campaign to stop human trafficking, Summer Stephan, Chief Deputy District Attorney, as well as Ebony Jones, a human trafficking survivor. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you. No problem.
Well, Summer, first of all, talk to me about what this campaign is about.
The Ugly Truth campaign is intended to debunk the myths about prostitution and sex trafficking. The media sometimes paints this as a glamorous life, but we in law enforcement see the pain, the trauma, the physical abuse the victims go through. We believe that if the public really knew the facts, that they would become part of the team to stop this.
And what are some of the facts that you want to get out there?
The facts are that none of these victims are getting rich in prostitution. This isn't a crime of choice, but rather that the traffickers keep all of the money and they have to suffer the abuse to make the money for the traffickers. Also that some little girl or boy wakes up and decides, this is the career I want to be a prostitute. That's a myth. The truth is that they would have suffered child abuse, witnessed domestic violence at home. So when the traffickers offered them and lured them into this kind of lifestyle, they don't know the difference. They don't know what a healthy life looks like. And we need the entire community to open their eyes to that.
Why are we launching this campaign now?
Because law enforcement has been relentless in going after the traffickers, but we realize it's not enough. This is a large problem in every big city, including San Diego, and the only way to defeat it is to have the entire community armed with the true facts to help us to detect the signs, to see the warning signs, and to call law enforcement and report.
And recently here in San Diego, there have been arrests of a couple people behind that prostitution website, and then in North County, several arrests of traffickers. Are we seeing more trafficking locally, or is law enforcement just doing a better job at catching this?
It's both. We are seeing that gangs have realized that this is a lucrative field. 85% are gang involved when they're controlling the victims, so that brings about more fear and more control to the victims. So this gang involvement is a large issue. Also then, law enforcement and prosecution have banded together in a San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force, so we are working collaboratively to stop it, to make these big arrests. These investigations take a long time. Why? Because traffickers know how to hide the victims in the shadows, and they convince the victims that they're not victims, that they're making a choice. They also convince them that society is just not going to care about them, that they're no one, they're just people engaged in prostitution that no one is going to care about. And law enforcement is sending a strong message that we do care, that we see you, that we recognize that you are victims, and we want to help you get out of this terrible ordeal.
And let's turn now to Ebony, a human trafficking survivor. I know we like to use survivor rather than victim. Tell me your story.
Well, for myself right now, I'm currently advocating for survivors that are involved in human trafficking, as well as the traffickers as well. What I've noticed is that there is a background history for most victims that have experienced human trafficking, as Ms. Summer has stated. For myself, I have experienced some pretty horrific abuse as a child growing up, and it has pretty much motivated me to be the voice for the survivors and the victims that are currently involved in human trafficking. There is a misconception that Ms. Summer has stated, that there is a choice, and there is no choice in prostitution. No woman or young boy or individual wakes up and says, I'm going to sell my body for a living. There's boundaries that have been crossed. There's things that has happened, has taken place that has the mentality, or the power rather, to overcome someone and make them feel that it's okay for them to sell themselves short. And a lot of people have lost their lives. So I pretty much dedicate my time and my life by sharing my testimony and what I've been through to empower youth by going into the juvenile hall system and going and speaking to people, motivating them and empowering them to continue to push forward, because people like Ms. Summer and law enforcement are really here to protect us. They're really here to help us have a voice now, and I'm so honored to be sitting here because it's now become an awareness, and I'm just here to pretty much support the movement for the Ugly Truth campaign and really shed the light on what the reality is for those that are victims of prostitution.
And can you talk to me about how old you were when you got involved in human trafficking?
The misfortune started when I was 18 years old, more or less coming from a unstable environment, dysfunctional environment. Unfortunately, my mother did the best that she could, but due to the circumstances that she was born into, I was easily convinced to sell my body.
And did it take a while for you to come full circle to realize people like Summer, law enforcement, were trying to help you?
Absolutely. It's a process, and everyone's process is different. And I believe, for myself, what I want the community to know is that people are human and they make mistakes, and it's like the power wheel. They're going to continue to relapse, they're going to continue to fall backwards, but to know that this community is supporting us, and that Ms. Summers and law enforcement understands, and as long as they're putting out the facts and they're putting out the myths about prostitution, it'll help people stand. And that's what I've found. I have educated myself on what prostitution really is, the trauma that's involved, and I've been able to change my perception and my mindset so that I can be more powerful in my voice.
Can you talk to me about the kind of power that these men had over you?
I can definitely speak on the vulnerabilities of young women who maybe lack a father in life, or maybe lack validation, or maybe come from a dysfunctional home, who definitely can be very at risk to be convinced that selling their body may be their best option.
Now, what is the one message you want to get out to the community, especially with all these big events coming into town?
Yes.
We have All-Star, we have Comic-Con coming up. What is it that you want to share?
I want to share to all the survivors out there and the victims out there, as well as the buyers and the traffickers, that we're shedding a light on this awareness, and no longer do they have to hide behind their pain and hide it behind what they say is the choice to be a prostitute. That as long as I feel that for myself, what has empowered me is Ms. Summers giving me a voice and showing me that I have a voice, and that my feelings and that my truth matters, and it's about my truth and not what society thinks, and it's up to us as survivors to show the world that we are human and that we are people.
And then Summer, to you, what message do you want to share? I know Ebony now is sharing her story, but a lot of the time people involved in human trafficking, I know, are pretty reluctant to speak about it.
Yes, and victims are controlled, and they are taught often from childhood that their voice doesn't matter, that decisions are being made for them. We want the victims to know that we see them and that they can get help. We also want the traffickers to understand that we're not just shining the light from law enforcement, that all of the community is going to be educated by the Ugly Truth campaign, so that they're watching them too. And the last and very important thing, we want to debunk the myths that buying human beings for sex is a victimless crime, because that is just not true. When men buy these young girls, boys, and grown women who had been victimized since childhood often for sex, they are causing sex trafficking to continue. They are the problem, and that needs to stop.
And then lastly, I know you're out there trying to catch these people. Can you talk about what kind of punishment they could face in the legal system?
For the traffickers, trafficking minors, they could face up to life in prison. And for trafficking adults, they can face up to 20 years in prison. There are very serious, this is a very important felony, and the community has become aware of it. But buyers need to be aware too, because when they buy victims, we are in the process of making our legislators aware of the damage and of increasing the punishment and the penalties for them. I can tell you that Sheriff Gore has made a commitment that he will make room in the jail for them. So when they are arrested, they will be put in jail.
Great, thank you, Summer. Ebony, I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
I'm Melissa Mejica for this week's San Diego Newsmakers for 10 News.